I think this is bigger than OJ.
Because there's a bigger question at stake, and we've got Ron Coleman here to help us understand what's going on. Ron, part of what is driving viewership on the news is the other day we had the killer on TV for the televised arraignment. And so one of the things I'm curious about, Ron, is this is in the state of Utah. It seems to me that this can be televised. It doesn't necessarily have to be televised. What I'm wondering is, from a legal standpoint and from an ethical standpoint, what do you think? Because the news channels, maybe even the networks, will cover this. I don't know if this is going to be like the OJ trial because it doesn't have the celebrity status necessarily, but in other ways it does. It's also gruesome and terrible and awful.
I think this is bigger than OJ.
I think it is bigger than OJ. Okay, so Ron, here's the question. Should it be? Should this be televised? What are the pros and cons in your mind of putting this on the air? Does it do more harm or does it do more good?
Heisenberg uncertainty principle, is it? Well, let me bring, I spoke at the National Conservatism Conference in Washington 3 weeks ago. And my talk was on the topic of how judges are affected by invasive and real-time media and social media, how different it is from when I started out in the profession, and how the judiciary forms consensus on certain issues hastily because of the immediacy of communication across the country now. And you bring up a very good point. How does, what is it? The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, is it?
Yeah.
No, Heisenberg uncertainty. It's impossible to remove the fact of observation from the formula of what happens in the experiment that's being observed.
That's right, folks. Ron Coleman, expert in law, science, and quantum physics. There's an entire ecosystem of LawTube that would explode if this is televised. That doesn't happen if it's not. Let me get Derek in here because you guys have inspired me. I did not have this on my mind. Derek, you may not have it on your mind. I bet you don't, but because you don't know what I'm going to ask yet. LawTube. That had never even entered into my thought process before discussing this. There's an entire ecosystem of LawTube that would explode if this is televised. That doesn't happen if it's not. What are your thoughts on that? And do you see that as good or bad in the new media? Because that's a new media opportunity. I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have also come to distrust the media spin, right? And so sometimes you want more trusted voices to cover, what you're correct would be the biggest trial of the century. I mean, nothing's bigger, OJ before, but I mean, this is huge. So I think you would want more trusted voices to cover this. You don't want to hear from the talking heads on mainstream media. That's it. And, they're the ones that are going to have most of the access, because they have the money to get out there and go to Utah and set up cameras outside the courtroom. So as soon as something happens in the courtroom, they would rush out and discuss it. So to have this on public display for everybody to watch, and then for the LawTubers to be able to go and make commentary as the trial is unfolding, as we're hearing evidence and different types of information, I think that would be vital for their channels, obviously. But then also, again, just vital for trusted voices to speak on this instead of just getting information second, third hand.
I've got a question for you, Ron, because I'm curious about this. How would you feel about just broadcasting the audio? Because I think that gives you a different experience, and it doesn't necessarily sensationalize the trial.
Well, that's a really good question, Lauren. That's what the Supreme Court does. You can listen to oral argument, but you can't watch oral argument. And one reason it's a good principled distinction is that I think psychologically there's something different, but also part of what has corrupted our culture is the obsession with the visual. Our eyes have to constantly be entertained. So, that would be a proposal that I think might be, because after all, what do you lose with, I want to see the guy on the stand, the law streamers talk about how this one looks like he's lying and this one, I mean, frankly, none of my friends, but, there are plenty of people who do law streaming who are full of shit. Views on what people look like, whether they look like they're being credible, whether they look like they're coached, are no better than my grandma's.